Hey, this is Kira from Fangirl Flails, and I tend to look at media such as television and movies, but mostly literature, through a feminist perspective. I've studied social justice as well as surrounded myself with like-minded individuals in the online community. Therefore, sometimes I use terminology that's not in everyone's vocabulary. So I thought I would just go through some terms and concepts that I reference a lot in my videos so everyone's on the same page. I'm in no way an expert, at all, so I'm going to leave a link down below to a blog post of mine where I have included lots and lots of feminist and social justice links that you guys can look through for yourselves. Firstly, feminism is not a hatred of men or of movement to be better than men or anything like that. Feminism at its heart is about equality. The dictionary says it's a movement for social, political, and economic equality between men and women. And that's basically what it is. With the internet, the feminist movement has shifted and transformed, but at its heart it will always be about equality. One of the goals of the feminist movement is the disestablishment of the patriarchy. The patriarchy in today's society is the social systems in which power is primarily held by men. This is super noticeable not only in government, which is mostly male, but also in rape culture, where men think that rape jokes are funny and that women should be held responsible for getting raped. Now onto the sexuality stuff, because we all know that straight or heterosexual is not the only sexuality out there. Homosexuality and bisexuality is pretty common, so you probably know what those mean. The first being sexually attracted to your own gender, and the second being sexually attracted to two genders. Now we start to get into sexualities that are commonly felt but not commonly talked about. Being pansexual means that you are or have the possibility to be sexually attracted to all gender identities. Being asexual means that you feel no sexual attraction. However, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have sex. Being demisexual means that you don't feel sexual attraction towards a person until you have a strong emotional connection with them. These prefixes can also be used to label romantic attraction. For example, an asexual person who has relationships with members of their own gender could possibly label themselves as a homoromantic asexual. There are also people who don't feel a romantic attraction and therefore would be called aromantic. Now, all of these labels can fall under the umbrella term of queer. This is the label that I most use to describe my sexual orientation, since explaining pansexual to every person I encounter is a little hard to do. However, queer is a reclaimed term, meaning it used to be used as a slur until the LGBT community took it back. This means you shouldn't use it to label an individual person unless they actually identify as such. I tend to use it to describe groups of people who I know aren't straight, but I don't know what each member specifically identifies as. This can be seen in my resolution to read more queer women writers. However, if someone tells me to stop using the word queer to describe them, I immediately do so. Transgender folk also fall under the umbrella term of queer, obviously. However, before we get into the difference between sex and gender, I want to address the issue of privilege. Privilege is having advantages or benefits, whether that be socially or institutionally, as a majority group at the expense of the minority. For example, I have white privilege, middle class privilege, able-bodied privilege, and cisgender privilege. Around the internet, you might hear the phrase, check your privilege. This basically means be super aware that you have this privilege, because most of the time, that privilege is invisible to those who have it. Therefore, before we get into gender identity, I just want to reinstate that I have cisgender privilege. Although I try to educate myself on transgender issues, sometimes my privilege can blind me. Being a cisgender person, meaning that my experience of my gender matches the sex I was assigned with at birth, means that I do not speak for transgender people. I urge you guys to go read about transgender issues from the transgender community, which I will leave links below. Knowing that, let's get into the definitions. Transgender is the opposite of cisgender, so that means that they have a gender identity that does not match up with the sex they were assigned with at birth. It can also mean a person who doesn't associate themselves with a gender, or a person whose gender identity does not conform to the conventional notions of gender or gender roles. This means that there is a wide range of labels. So this includes, but definitely is not limited to, trans men, trans women, genderqueer, which is an umbrella term for those who do not fit into binary concepts, Agender, which tends to mean androgyny, in which people cannot be classified into gender roles. Bigender or gender fluid, in which a person moves between masculine and feminine gender roles. And some people who don't adhere to labels at all. Sometimes you'll hear me use the phrase cishet, and this just means a cisgender heterosexual person. The term is normally used when talking about privilege, and so it might seem like a negative term or even a slur. To understand why the bashing of white cis-het men isn't considered oppression and shouldn't be criticized for being mean, you have to understand oppression and power. It's a fairly easy concept that the majority can't seem to wrap their head around. Oppression is the combination of prejudice and institutional power. Prejudice is a judgment that is learned, sometimes based on stereotypes. Institutional power is the established laws, customs, or practices that produce inequalities based on one's member in a minority group. I can hold a prejudice against men, but I cannot oppress them because there are no laws that have taken away men's rights and given them to women. That's not a thing that has happened. People of color cannot be racist against white people because racism is based on oppression. By complaining about white cishet men, who, by the way, have a very long history of oppressing people, I am not endangering their rights or even promoting dangerous stereotypes. However, using the N-word or making a rape joke as a member of the group in power, you are just perpetuating those stereotypes that fuels the oppression. So don't do it! I am always learning new things about social justice, so if I've screwed something up or left something crucial out, please let me know in the comments. Hopefully now some things are more clear and I'll stop having to answer the same questions every single day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!